I'm from MA Fashion and Environment, and I'm here to introduce my project Shed Me Clothes. Shed Me Clothes responds to the need to develop a less energy-intensive use phase within the clothing life cycle through innovation fueled by biomimetics. Biomimetics is the study of nature to inform and solve design problems. With over 3.8 billion years of evolution, nature has developed the most efficient biological mechanisms for survival. Nature manufactures using low energy, low pressure, and water. Polymers are the building blocks of all materials. Nature uses just 2, whereas the man-made world has developed over 300. Biomimetics can be applied to textiles, the most famous example being Velcro. The hook and eye structure was inspired by the hooks on birds that attach to fur and clothing. MMT textiles noted pine cones open and close depending on the humidity of their environment. They have developed a textile that adapts to changing temperatures, opening when warm and closing when cold. Other examples include the Lotus effect that have been translated into water-repellent textile surfaces. Speedo developed the laser racer by examining the surface of sharks to reduce the drag of their swimsuits. Finisterre creates outerwear containing a specially designed insulating textile inspired by fur seen on animals like the otter. The clothing life cycle looks relatively simple when drawn out like this. However, it is incredibly complex, with numerous inputs and outputs determining how the overall garment is used and disposed. The clothing life cycle is usually linear, and the end point being disposal when garments eventually get thrown away, which creates a major strain on our landfills. So why focus on the use phase? The reason being is because the laundering of garments creates the most environmental impact in comparison to the other aspects of a garment's life cycle. Franklin Associates discovered that 82% of a garment's total energy requirements are consumed during the use phase. Not only is the use phase energy intensive, but the use of detergents creates waste. Detergents can contain phosphates that build up in aquatic environments, encouraging algae growth on the surface of water, ultimately starving fish and plant life underneath of oxygen. Therefore, Shed Me Clothes explores the ability of creating fashion inspired by nature for a more sustainable industry through the development of a biomimetic textile that aims to alleviate the need to launder clothing, thus save energy while also offering an alternative end of life. I became fascinated with how snakes and other reptiles shed skin for growth, repair, and renewal. This constant renewal reminded me of how in the frequent laundering of clothing we are trying to achieve the same thing, to look our best. The skin on snakes is a protective barrier, much like our own skin. However, we have developed another barrier, clothing, to protect us from embarrassment. Damage to the skin of a snake is much like when we spill food on our favourite t-shirt. We both set about the process of renewing and repairing to achieve its previous state. However, the snake does this with minimal energy and little to no impact to its surrounding environment. The construction of the Shed Me Clothes textile takes inspiration from spacer textiles, which are 2 knitted layers connected with a monofilament yarn. Instead of 2 layers, the textile will be multi-layered with a water-soluble connective yarn that when sprayed with water will dissolve, separating the layers. Various samples were created to test construction techniques. This included domestic knit hand-crocheted samples, 2 needle-bar domestic knitted woven samples, and 2 needle-bar industrial stole machine knitted woven samples. Prototypes were developed on the stole machine, however currently only with 2 layers. All samples were tested to check that the water-soluble yarn would dissolve to separate layers, which it did. Multiple layered handmade samples indicated that water did not pass through the remaining layers when removing the top layer. A slight residue was evident, however, on the surface of the new top layer, therefore this requires further investigation. The removal of layers instead of washing garments can save energy and prevent waste sludge from detergents being produced. A cotton t-shirt has been reported to use up to 65 megajoules of energy during its use phase. Therefore, it can be assumed that a Shed Me Clothes cotton t-shirt has the potential to save up to 65 megajoules. The shed layers can be composted due to being made of a single natural fibre, presently cotton. Average consumers throw clothing away or give to charity. Composting offers another, perhaps healthier method of disposal. Anaerobic digestion allows for the methane created during composting to be collected as a source of energy. They explored methods of translating the textile into garment shapes. For layers to be peeled away, garments must have no seams, yet cape and wraparound skirt shapes were a little too basic and uninspiring. Epoch by Isa Miyake challenges the process of producing clothing. Here a stretch-knit tubular garment can be cut in any place and the fabric will not unravel. Isa Miyake's Reality Lab created the 1, 3, 2, 5 collection, where fabric can be folded with sharp, precise, permanent creases, very similar to origami. This is done without any cutting and sewing, and when unfolded, beautiful 3D garments are created. I designed some basic garments with fastenings incorporated within the patterns that when tied together would create 3D garments. This created far more interesting and versatile garment shapes than the previous cape and wraparound skirt ideas. This storyboard visually represents the process of removing the layers of a chesne-clothes garment. The disposability must be further explored, especially with regards to fibre, antimicrobial finishes and consumer research. For example, will consumers actually compost their clothing? Fashion has always been disposable, as noted by Oscar Wilde during the 19th century. Fashion is a form of ugliness, so intolerable we have to alter it every 6 months. Chesne clothes, as well as offering an alternative use phase, also offers an alternative end of life, allowing for fashion to continue to change and evolve. For further information, please visit chesneclothes.com.